and the eggs, hatched or not, right? Now, the birth certificate is a claim on the hatched eggs, or those that are fertilized. The marriage certificate is the claim on the eggs unfertilized and the uterus, right? This is so that any issue from the womb is already claimed by the Church of Rome, the Pope, who declared himself substitute for the Nazarene or for Jesus, and declares the authority over all life. And so the Church is claimed to be your mother. So she can kill the children or not. This is where Roe versus Wade comes in, where they authorized sacrificing the children because they needed more hamburgers.
So don't do the marriage license, is what you're saying?
The marriage license is the bank bond. Yeah, bank bond against the uterus. Now,
so how does she unite?
Huh?
How do you unite with one?
Now, hold on. Why did I call you in here?
Right?
Now, this is the point. We abandon our venue or our side of the chessboard. They're playing both sides. This is what the transmitting utility is. Transmitting utility is them reaching across the board playing your parts because you ain't playing your own part. And then when you do, you're doing it in their name, so you're still playing on their side of the board against yourself. So this is what the brand system is. This is the role that Negro, Black, and Colored, Smith, Jones, and Johnson, this is what it plays in trust laws. And so our people don't know that when they claim to be Smith, Jones, and Johnson, that they're actually abandoning their estate. It never dawns on them that this is really the issue. They just think it's informationally invalid.
So what do I
or historically a fraud. No, you're talking about a mistake. That's what they don't want you to look at. You see the point? People on their side and people on our side. Now, point. Why is everybody upset? Why they're attacking you? Now, remember when we were talking time ago, and I said I want to stay in the background, right? Because they already called me the Fourth World War, right? So I'm automatically a target. And so in the association, they already know that I don't play with them, if you get the point. And then plus, the traders amongst us also, when they're around me, and they talk about me like a dog with my people.
We all got family members like that.
I don't play with them. I don't play with them. And I always recognize when people with merit and sincerity are around, because they are the ones who will really get the work done. Are we clear? It ain't a matter of time, it's a matter of sincerity. You get the point? Because then nature opens up your cell memory. Because you always were who you are. And some of you are your own ancient mothers and fathers. Just come again. Somebody got to smack you around and remind you. You know what I mean? Well, it's true. When you start become cognizant of that, now the dark priesthood wake up, because they know who light is and who ain't. So the vampire invites you to the party, right? And everybody bringing cake. Just don't bring no matches. Well, let's light the candles and stuff. But you don't understand. And that's pretty much what's going on. And this is for everybody to understand why you're here. Because you present in the current events the proper platform from which our arguments should have been made for generations. It is not so much that we are diplomatic to them, because we're not. We are the consuls of the land. but we must have a platform by which controversies between us can be heard. They're not supposed to be calling you, you're supposed to call them. They're supposed to be sending agents or diplomats to converse with someone that you assign to whatever matters that may be concerned with them. Are we clear? Any instruments, because basically, in general, the fundamental operations of government is generally correct, just corruptedly executed.
Yeah.
When there's an instrumentality coming from them that we choose to use, you always create an in lieu of instrument.
Islam, Tom. Would you like something to drink?
Islam.
Would you like something to drink? Are you thirsty?
Yes, please. Hot, if possible.
Your
Please.
mother used right?
And so, now people among our own, and particularly people who have title, who have been holding title, in the Moorish Science Temple of America as an example, right? Many of them secretly respect what you're doing and are glad you're doing what you're doing, but publicly among themselves will criticize, knock, or deny, or pretend they don't understand, because actually you're carrying out what they were assigned to carry out. Do you understand? Point that I'm making, the sooner as the people come here and understand it is all of our obligation to do this. It's not, you're not on your own. You know, you take a position because you're assigned divinely to do that. You know, and it's your obligation to too, but it's all of our obligations. Now, again, to the limit that we have been inactive collectively. Now, actually, there's a couple of million conscious Moors across this country and outside of this particular jurisdiction that are actually active. You know, so in different territories, there will be active Moors like ourselves, many of them in different areas that are actually in larger numbers. But you will see in different areas, different levels of consciousness, if you get the point. And it is growing. And so, but one of the things that I wanted to say is because of the learning curve amongst many of the conscious Moors that have been gathering around the Consulate of late months, have been so effective in the levels of rising consciousness, which is why you're under attack. It has nothing to do with things that were initiated even earlier. Because remember, these activities are already take place from the inception of any transaction of mortgage. It's foreclosed within 72 hours in the first instance. It's like chickens on a rotisserie, you know, when they decide to take one off or your turn type thing. Now, and so when you become active, it neutralizes the instruments that everybody keeps trying to capture. So when someone nationalizes, and that's with consciousness, and starts activating in any kind of a manner, it starts killing the instrumentalities that you will never get your hands on, with all the allonges attached. So if this is another reason why they want people to make what you call a concerted effort to authenticate birth certificates and stuff like that, to get your hand into that, rather than to divert you from just nationalizing and making public activities, because that's what kills those instruments, because you'll never get them instruments. There is no clerk nowhere in any political jurisdiction that will transfer to you any original instrument, including that birth certificate. So when people even imply that you're going to capture that birth certificate, they start off lying to you. Because the issue is what people seek, and this is back to understanding what is it that we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. When people are trying to make claims on these instrumentalities, they're trying to take the position of holder in due course. Holder in due course must be the holder of the original instrumentalities with all alonges thereto attached. So that means the original mortgage contract agreement, the ledger attachments, which are called allonges. That's with all signatures of anyone whose hands it passed through, who used it, which will be
The history of it.
this longer than your arm.
Right. Right. Of the conveyances going from one to the next.
They're called allonges,
Allonges.
right? That's double L.
Right.
And in the argument of foreclosure, the holder in due course would be some man or woman who's an attorney, who is an emissary or an assigned representative of the holder in due course, who brings such instrumentality to a magistrate of a territory and makes argument that the tenant is in breach of this contract in some form or another for the rental fees, whether you're talking about taxations or payments in a so-called mortgage. If that is not the presentment, the magistrate has no authority whatsoever to issue a writ of execution. Now, what they've been doing, they've been bypassing that because they're not the holder in due course and can't be. Are we clear? So this is to understand what's been happening. Now, coming up to
Touch, please explain why they could never be the holder of due course.
they could never be the holder. They could never be holder of due course. Number one, because they're not American.
Okay.
Let's not think money.
See, I'm
They're
thinking
not
that, I'm
American.
thinking that as soon as that instrument is established, it's
See,
just being sold from place to place to place, so somebody at one point has it.
Now those souls, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Now let's look at this. To be holder in due course, you must present them in your argument. Now, when a court which would represent a body of men and women who have delegated authority to act on these things and limited by the Constitution and treaty, that means they can't go outside of that, right? Their obligation is to look at the instrumentality and see if this person who's presenting a claim on this estate has presented them with the wedding signature of the mortgage and the promissory note, because the promissory note is the instrument that was sent to 55 Water Street, upon which all transactions were made at DTC. Right?
55 Water.
Yeah. So, and then they must contact the tenant, the alleged tenant, and then you have opportunity to answer to this, right? So under the rule of discovery, they must show you the original instrumentality to prove their claim. This is why you have court systems. Are we clear? Now keep this in mind, since Eisenhower shut down the consular court, our people been going to these municipal courts, which was an automatic already lost. They're incompetent and improper and already set up and unconstitutional. Are we clear? This is why the Supreme Court declared the state courts incompetent. That's where that declaration comes in. Meanwhile, we're going on from generation to generation. Everybody sitting around talking about duality, talking about the Moorish divine national movement. Ain't nobody activating Article 3. You see what's happening? Huh? Now, the deal of it is, when you issued any instrumentality from the cultural venue, all of them grand sheets, this was their grand opportunity to step up and act.
Yeah. Start thinking that would happen.
No, not where they at. You already knew. Where they at? You my niggas. We're going downtown, we're gonna kick G's ass. How you start feeling wind all around it? Now, not changing the subject, that's why I founded the roundtable. You take the principal outside of their venue, yeah, I still deal with them, but ain't under their jurisdiction. Because I already know they're traitors. You don't argue with them. You get the work done. But you need other honorable people that understand principle and not the label. The principle stays the same. The cause creates institutions. Institutions don't necessarily create cause.
Tarik, could you say that again? That was, please. What, say that again?
Cause.
Cause.
Yes.
Principle.
Yes.
Create institutions.
Yes.
Institutions don't necessarily create cause.
When there's a cause for security,
is divine.
you got the
pure.
Moorish task force.
You understand? And when you understand cause, it doesn't matter the name it comes in. You see the essence. This is where people are blinded when they get off principle, they can be fooled. Do you understand? Stay on principle. However, point is that when Eisenhower shut down Consulate Court, that's basically looking at the history and the law. Why in the early '80s I did now CM Bay was an atom in the Moorish movement, and of course he left and he did the Clocks of Destiny 1 and 2, and he did Circle of Life, etc. Moorish Nationality and Identification, he registered in the Library of Congress. And that's what AA 222-141 is. Now, AA is the highest level of citizenship, which is essentially the national. You understand? And then you have classifications of citizens from A1 to A19. These would be in your green card type categories. And of course, you got to fix the mentality of the Americans because they have come to accept the schism. So now you have brothers and sisters in the South or on the islands who are acting like they're not Americans because the European treats them like they're not Americans. Do you understand? And the Europeans are giving Americans European corporation green cards to move around on their own land.
So excuse me, when you say islands, do you mean the Caribbean islands?
Yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
You're an American.
Yeah, I know. I heard it.
But I'm saying, so I'm talking in principle that we have to fix it with our people. Because our people are in the mentality that when they come from an island or somewhere that they're coming to America. you're American.
You're already American.
Moving around in America, what, you know, that mental concept must be destroyed.
Can you explain in Jamaica you have the Maroons? What's
Yes, that's the Maroons. There are Moors who still know they're
So
Moors.
we've been going to traveling to
That's
the
why they
Caribbean for
separate.
thousands of years.
That's what, because they ain't buying the bullshit. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because
Okay.
most of the names in many parts of the islands are no more than 100, 125 years old. These people are Moors.
Yes.
You know?
And I saw a portrait in this island called St. Vincent. You see the Moors with the fez signing treaties. I'm like, wait, how can you be a slave and you signing treaties?
Because they're not, see, this whole slave is a mentality. Plus, slave is Slovakian. It's a nationality of Europeans. Yeah. You know, so the problem that we have is people among us who know these things who won't refute this misinformation and allow our people to take these things as realities, which makes them incompetent and then makes them subject. And then you have people who get this information that start making clubs not to teach people, but clubs to control people.
Yes.
So they're just as corrupt. This is where your problem is. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
So when you nationalize, you stop ICE and all that.
It means that you come out of that false paradigm, starting with what's here and in your heart. You don't abandon your brothers and sisters, but you don't let them feed you no bullshit like they own the birthright. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And what the problem that you have a lot of people that's been running the temples that's been treating like the people like they own the birthright. That's where corruption is. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And it don't mean that we don't deal with them, but when they start acting like they own your birthright, understand that brother and sister ain't your friend. Your birthright is like the blood in your veins. They don't own that talking about give me a cup. No. You get your own straw. I got turtleneck one day. I don't know about you. You know, type thing. You know what I mean? Because they be sucking on people's blood. And so we have all of these dynamics that we have to fix at the same time. So it's pressure on us. However, the point that I'm saying is that the elders who have this information must pass it to the next generations without motive, without this greed, without this ego, without this, you know, the peacock guy with all these badges all over the damn place. You come on that shit. You know, really, you know. And so our position is to try to get as much information you can to the younger generations clean, without a whole bunch of baggage, without a bunch of agendas, without ego. You know what I mean? At the same time, it don't mean that you be a carpet, but you know, this is a birthright issue. This belongs to the people. Treat it accordingly. You know what I mean? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You know, and the sooner we can get our people to deal with these things honorably and get people who are becoming conscious to really, really understand birthright. You don't be arrogant. Don't let nobody come play you like they're giving you something. This already belonged to you. You just wasn't aware of it. That's all. So why don't we all get rid of our egos and out of love and respect for each other, let's help each other get over this Roman occupation that's injuring all of us. Put a snoring for me too. You know, because that's really what we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind too, and this is important too, Jeff. You know, because understand this. And it's not unlike what we talked about a couple years ago. When I was saying, you know, a lot of things we go through different processes when it's got to be here and it's got to be here. 9 times out of 10, if they offer you a process, it's always colored. Always colored. And they never honor What they do, they buy time. Everything they do is based on them buying time. And like I was saying, this is what I was saying before, I don't tell people not do things. I'm just saying, don't think that he's going to honor any process that he presents to you when the whole existence of him dealing with you is to steal your birthright. This is like a vampire telling you, let's have a discussion on which side of the neck I'm going to stick the straw. And then you start taking them serious. Well, see the golden straw and see what was really. No.
Now, I got a question about that.
Go ahead.
We was talking about that on the way up here. We were trying to figure like why is it that our ancestors even try to establish treaties and I guess I mean I know we were at war with them.
You're thinking, and this is another thing with us. This is, and look at this, Jeff. I think we talked about this a couple years ago too. One of the things that we have to get through, get over ourselves. We got this idea, this weird sense of self-righteousness, that if it comes from us, we're always moral and ethical, and if it comes from the European, it's not. Do you understand? Like we were all clean and moral, just taken advantage of. Well, no. It is our corruption that caused our fall. Let's just get over that part. Now, this is the deal. This whole operation here of the United States, the Republic, is a culmination of agreement to look at an inevitable operation of addressing solutions that it is not in the interest of society or the earth planet for us to continue these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years continuous wars. Different names, same war. Punic War, Hasdrubal, Hannibal. Hannibal Barca Bay, this is symbolic, but fact. Queen Dodo, Carthage, queen, daughter of King of Tarik. The Christian Crusades, Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France. Operative War of 1812 in Michigan. Revolutionary War, etc. Also earlier, Battle of 732, yes, 732. All of these are the same war. They're different names only for the time periods. People's concepts of how to look at history is incorrect. Just like our people don't recognize that they are their mothers and their fathers with new bodies. At what point they don't understand how nature works. You are who your forefathers were without doubt or contradiction. And the battles that they're battling, you're battling today, is just that you went to sleep and forgot that these are Romans, not white people.
Yeah.
These are Europeans, not Americans. When you call them American, you give them your birthright, and thus the sovereignty that goes with it. Then you want to bitch and complain and march all over the place when they start exercising it. It's like calling somebody God and then getting mad because they act like it. No, it's true. So we've got to really clean ourselves up on multiple levels. Now keep this in mind. I'm going to get with you in a minute, brother. The agreement with treaties because the Moorish Empire was falling. Now, when you look at Boabdil as an example, and he would be Muhammad Muhammad the seventh, something like that. Boabdil, when in Al-Andalus, later to be called Spain. Are we clear? Not Spain, later to be called Spain. So when you're looking in European history and they say the Moors in Spain, it's kind of not exactly, no, the Moors in Al-Andalus, after the defeat of the Moors, they called Al-Andalus Spain.
Isabella and
When
Ferdinand.
Isabella and Ferdinand
Ferdinand.
married and merged their kingdoms, Aragon and Castile. All right, so you got to look at things as they really are to understand who we are. Now, to know the history is to answer your question. Yes and no is not adequate in most answers. Because if you don't know the law and history, the answer is an empty cup. It's a cup. It ain't got much in it. Because you'd answer your own question. And I say that your question, common, is usually predicated from this assumed innocence on our part, and that the Europeans the total aggressor. In some instances that is true, but not as a whole. So when you're looking at Boabdil, and you're looking at the Almoravids and Almoravides, and the different dynasties of Moors. You had some of us, like in the battles, sometimes we would use a all red flag, and then in the land or the peace jurisdiction we'd have Venus in our flag. So they were all ours. However, you had Moors who were vying for power amongst each other. One of the things that occurred even in the Alhambra was Moors, different Moors who were being offered positions of authority if they would open the gates. This is, as a matter of fact, that's how they breached the Alhambra, even though it had multiple security measures, etc. So, even though the fall of the Moors takes place in centuries, they would use certain, what you call major wars, as what you call historical landmarks, like say 732, Poitiers, near Poitiers, France, right? If Charlemagne had not, that's why they called him the Hammer, had not won that battle, all of Europe would be Islamic right now. Are we clear? And so this was one of your first breaks of the Moors. Then when you have, so that's 732, right? And so you have up to 1492, January the 1st, which is what makes that so important to the Europeans. It was clear that the Alhambra was going to fall. Are we clear? And so Boabdil relinquished the Alhambra to the Romans to keep everything from being destroyed. You know, how do you say, in other words, instead of burn the house down, give you the house, we'll deal with it later, let's try to, because then nobody wins.
Right.
And this is basically, I'm still answering your question.
Okay.
Because we keep looking very often at what is taking place now and the immorality of this whole thing. Why would our forefathers treat with them? Treat is simply agreement between you and an opponent. Well, you gonna fight forever? Or you gonna keep on seeing families destroyed? And this is where you get even April Fool's Day. So in April, this is later, because under treaty they were agreeing to let a lot of the women and the children, not suffer the consequence of Christian petards and whatnot. And so they let them get on the ships, and they were supposed to be going to America, to the Northwest, and also some to South Asia, which we call Africa now. Remember, that's Asia, South Asia. And they had thousands, really, women and children on ships. Then they burnt the ships in the water, and that's why they call it April Fool. That's where April Fool came from.
Wow.
Now, yes. Now, yes, that's April Fool.
Yes,
Yeah.
About every so-called holidays it gets
And so you have a situation where the Romans have been ruthless. This is where they get the term ruthless, because Ruth, the Moabitess. So anyone that doesn't have that compassion is called ruthless. That's where you get that term from. Now, also to get grounded a little bit to understand the politics here. Look at the Whigmore Party.
Just talking about that.
The Whigmore Party. Look at Horace Greeley when he came into the party. They've had conventions right here at Amexem, Philadelphia area. That's where their conventions were. And this is when in 1854, they agreed when they set up the Republican Party, that it was suggested that the European sons and daughters take on the title free white people, which belongs to you. And this is when they start calling themselves white people, which is a noble title. It has nothing to do with complexion. Now, in order to promote the fraud of claiming your heirship, they paid off a lot of Moors that agreed to be Negroes and blacks and Indians, thinking they're going to get a benefit, to promote that white and black were identities. This is where this whole fraud comes from, people thinking that black is an identity and thinking that white is an identity. Both on the statuses, black is dead in law, white is sovereign and God ruler. That's, yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. And this is what we're dealing with today. Now, to stop this carnage, okay, remember this is going on for hundreds of years. This is a continuation of the Punic Wars. Right. Punic means Phoenicians. That's what that means. Punic is simply a transliteration word for Phoenicians. All right, so you're Phoenicians too, so you need to understand that. All right. So when you hear Carthaginian, Phoenician, Saracen,
what about
all
Sumerian?
of them is Moors.
Sumerians?
Yeah, all of them is Moors. And even a sociological term called Semitic, it still means Jew. Okay. It don't mean that European Jew. You know what I mean? So you come up to the karmic debt, and then you deal with the czars of Russia, etc., the subjugation of the Slavic nations, etc. This is where you get the connotative, subjugated, not meaning but presentment of slave, as slave is accepted today in its meaning. That's not its true meaning. That's connotative. Okay. So that's when the Red Russians subdued the Slovakian nation. Okay. You understand? And so this the connotation slave has its life with that process. And so when you agree to be slave, you just said that you're Slovakian. Logically, you're lying. Right. You understand? And these are dangers of our people accepting connotative linguistics without knowing the history. It's another reason why you nationalize, because if you let them miscategorize you and you don't correct it, you're in trouble again. Now, go ahead, bro.
Can you define, when I look up the terminology for Moors, it says mixed Berber.
Say it again?
The definition for Moors, it says mixed
Moor is just Moor is just a short of Al-Moroccan.
Okay.
That's short. That's just a short. Moroccan or Al-Moroccan. Now, so when you're talking about Al-Moroccans, you're talking about the descendants of ancient Canaanites and Moabites. Or in a collective phrase, all descendants of general North and South Asia, which would be referred to as Asiatics and Africans. And so in general, if you're talking in the political sense on the world stage of somebody from Nigeria, Algeria, Tunis, the North Gate, South Gate, Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, just say Moor and it covers all of them.
Yeah, because there's another definition. It says any dark-skinned person from Africa. So
Well, that's what it means.
so I'm like,
Well, that's because that's it. If you're Asiatic African, you're Moor.
yeah.
Now, individual territories, you may have political jurisdictions where you use territorial names. So if you're using territorial names, like say, if you may be in northeast or north or west Asia, which we now call Kemet or Africa, etc. You know, that would be territorial. But bloodline, they're still Moors. You know, they're still Moabite Canaanite. You know, they're no different than like, say we're here in Shakamatsun territory, or what you would call Philadelphia, right? So when I come over here, you know, I was just at the family house over in Pennsauken. Then I was at the other house in Camden, which is parallel. Don't make me different. See, our concepts of how we think of ourselves is incorrect. Do you understand? Like our people don't understand fundamental political geography. You know, they think, you know, as an example, traditional conversations with our people in their so-called senses of Afrocentricity. And you know, the ancient Hamites and the Canaanites and stuff, and when they had, you know, the great super to be here, and they divided the land between Ham and Cush, and then later on some of these different people met. Well, Ham and Cush is simply representative of mothers and sons. Same people, same bloodline. Mom, instead of leaving the house to their children, she moves across the Atlantis, which was once a great river before the cocoa plate split. Right? So like if you were in the South Gate, you're more familiar with the cocoa plate tectonic plates than a lot of people up here in the North who ain't too bright on geography. You understand what I'm saying to you? And so when the cocoa plate split, then you see the east side, northeast side of Asia, South Asia, split off and come what they be called Africa now. But that was right in the Gulf of Mexico. So the soil in the land of flowers is called Florida, and the soil of Morocco is identical. Sierra Leone, the crystals, everything is all identical because that's what was right there. You would go across the river like you go across the Delaware, except it was a little larger at that time, right? Yeah, and the Mississippi is the Nile, you know, and it's man-made, That's not a natural river. That's why sometimes flow one way, sometimes flow the other way. But deal over this. These are facts of our own history that many of the people here don't know about their own history. And so they have allowed the European to reconstruct history and mentally separate us from our own land so he can make the claim. So what you have, this is what you have with us. You have with us the mental problem of accepting reconstructed history. And then often getting a little bit of history of the ancient world and then still trying to mix the two and trying to make sense of it. And then people who are addicts who know the history don't want to rock the boat and just blow this stuff out of the water and make people uncomfortable, or wanting to get along with people and telling them what they want to hear instead of the real truth to get them out of this dirt. And so this is where we have this confusion in that area. And so, because the immoral and unethical position we find ourselves in, there's this view in the mind and in the heart of this obvious sellout among us. So why would our forefathers make treaties with these? Why would our forefathers make treaty with these Romans? It was a necessity of your fall. And there's also karmic debt. So this is why you will see that who did the Moors give the under the Nationality, or what you call the Great Tree of the Great Peace, the fundamental principles of Hermetic law that formulates the Constitution, right? There's bringing them into the constitutional fold of government because the wrongs that were done to them, because they were held to slavery by the Moors first.
Okay.
Are we clear?
Yeah.
So the concepts that our people have in the reconstructed history that we were slaves is incorrect. The European was slaves first. As they came into power, they enslaved us in place or subjugated us and then put the slave tag on us. And here we are today. Heirs of the estate don't know we heirs. Now, and they, to make the claim, start, promoting that they are Americans and encouraging us to agree that they are Americans. Not knowing that that's not an innocent statement at all. It's absolutely dangerous to your estate. This is why we try to remind our people, stop calling the European white man. It's not a complexion. It's a status. Your status. This is the reason why we, for decades been telling people when they start getting conscious, get a law dictionary. And we tell them specifically fourth and below, and then study history and understand that status and estate are equals. And of course, when you start getting into that, it will start opening up whole areas of comprehension of what's going on, which is of course why a lot of grand sheiks and sheikesses in the Moorish movement get upset because once you start getting into that area of understanding, you really start understanding what birthright really is, and you're not so easily smoked into belief type mentality, and they can't have that Allah's gonna take your sandwiches if you don't give us $5, and you go, how many start looking like you just took Ritalin and stuff, and this is pretty much what they've done to the people in the temple. You understand what I'm saying? Except for a handful, most of them get into that, pseudo-Christian reverse church mentality, which is why next time when you get into really knowledge, you can't deal with them. They're no different than Christianized zombies with fez on them. Unfortunately, that's true. And they take offense to knowledge. Now, and so, and this is again why, and it's unfortunate, but it's just a political reality. To fix a lot of things, why you have to actually be outside of that venue. You have to be in a venue where you have free thinkers who are not afraid to think to get something done, because most times you won't get nothing done with them, not because the venue is not correct. The venue is correct. Is that the leadership is corrupt or lack courage to tell the truth, while in secret they know the truth because they're addicts. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. You asked something. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Now, and this is back to with the family on Americana. Now, Americana is all the islands on the Atlantis and the Pacific side. Both of them, they're all Americana. Is with the family, start getting them to stop calling this European American. Stop calling him white man. And every time they do, they just sold out another soul. They don't know that because they don't know the power of words.
I preach that a lot, my brother. I preach it a lot. I watch you for 6 years, and I preach it a lot. I convert at least one person a week on my job. I do construction. I work very hard. I just want to let you guys know that I work very hard and teach my brothers and explain to them. And I have a lot of people looking up stuff right now.
It is much appreciated. And see, this is the other thing why it's really important, even for like the young mothers. See, because if you get it in them, they'll automatically put it in the males and the females.
Yeah. Yes.
You see? And it should be presented with facts, knowledge, and no beliefs. Don't even go to take beliefs.
I know.
For children, rabbits, and imbeciles.
Exactly.
With all due respect, you know.
You said that one more time for my consort.
Beliefs are for children, rabbits, and imbeciles. The people who are not willing to handle reality.
Just
You know, and it's not a knock on them. It's just putting things in. In other words, if we're not going to be honest and just put things where they need to be, let's not talk about freedom and liberty, because it does not exist with ignorance. Ignorance and a lack of knowledge, liberties and freedoms, they don't go together. You know, if you got ignorant people or people that don't deal with knowledge, don't look for liberty and freedom, because it does not exist with them. You know, so people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
But again, back to the point. Much of our suffering is because people who know won't have the courage to tell the truth. They want to keep these little clubs going on where they got their hands in people's pockets and people going salami bologna with them and getting them Negro plaques and put all over the wall. And this is really where our problem is. We need to, them type of people need to be moved out of the way. You know, and no one to do it better. Not so much with the sons, because we have a tendency to get like simple and violent. Not that we can't. I mean, not that, you know, not that it should never take place, but general. But women can do this stuff cleaner because they work everything any daggone way. But they need to dump all the bullshit that they've accepted all these generations and deal with this real knowledge. Because they will make, this is the same way a woman will protect her children by nature. Woman's nature is government. She just needs to recognize it without ego, without a negative intention, you know, without a negative manipulation mentality of this corruption type thing. And this thing can be fixed pretty much overnight.
I just want to make that clear, you know, to everyone here. I watched you for 6 years. I watched Jamal Flakes, and talking about women, I watched her for like a couple weeks, and she's the reason why I'm here.
Because there's a natural spirit of government that's just it's just who she really is. You know, and I think if we can get past the reconstructed dogmatic view of each other that we've learned socially and understand the nature of beings, that woman's nature is to govern. There's like one of the things that when as I was growing up, and that problems that I had like in my first matrimony that I didn't understand when I was growing up. Now my father, as an example, was always a reader and a very loving man, and I grew up with what I saw or what I thought I understood family was, you know, and this is where men would, no matter what issues they had in general, this is not an absolute, but in general, where they would come home, they would keep a couple of dollars in their pocket, and they'd give all the money to your mother because she would take care of business, she'd run the house. You know, he would fix things, but she ran things. And it wasn't a conflict. It wasn't, his masculinity wasn't threatened or anything. It wasn't like that. It was this kind of partnership. And that's what I thought things were. I mean, I didn't know better. I mean, you know, like when you grow up, you think you know what you see. I mean, so when I came in the matrimony, that's what I thought it was supposed to be. I mean, for me, you know, and you know, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't run the street, family first, and all that. And that's what I got put through the ringer, you know, because I expected that's how it was out here, and it took me to get older, really understand those things of having expectations that if people don't know certain cultures, you can't expect certain things. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But in some ways, I recognize that kind of culture, which was valued in the family bonding, was lost in our family, which is why most of our families and relationships don't last anymore, because we have a dead culture. Our values have been lost, and we don't necessarily recognize it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And so there's no honor and respect between men and women anymore. And it has much to do with culture, and we be blaming each other, not knowing that we've adopted the Christian black codes that's actually destroyed our families. And so we made it each other, and Rome is in the background and created this whole paradigm, and we bought into it. Oh, we bought into it. Lock, stock, and barrel. And, you know, so, again, we have a lot of things that we need to address. And again, like I say, and I say again, that we're here and breathing, and, you know, it's not too late. If we're not in the body, then it'd be for somebody else to do. However, the cognizance that we have means that we have assignment. So Mother is assigning us to fix this thing. And we must come to recognize why we're here to do this. You know, and though that may seem roundabout, you know, the real deal is why we're here. And why Consulate. That is the venue. That is the venue. That was put in place before we were born to address our issues, both of persons and of property. And so in those areas, it's important that we become more and more competent with each other. And that, you know, it becomes down to earth. I mean, it doesn't need to be complex, down to earth. And the deal of it is, what's happening with the Europeans is that, and this is important too, so you can make notes on this. Let's back up, and particularly for y'all, you know, because you all will teach those on your level and those who come after you. So let's talk in general. Let's look at the not just the treaties in the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Let's look at how we got here to where we are. And also why some of the grand governors and grand sheiks and stuff get upset with Taji guy.
Who's this?
And like we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, what's going on?
What makes the Lincoln administration important is not so much Lincoln himself, as you might say, although he may be looked at as a son of destiny. So let's look at the moral side. You know, let's look at chronology of events from that perspective, right? So the Lincoln administration, when you look at, as an example, how many of you familiar with the William Dungy case?
Everybody
Look
should
around the
know
room.
about that.
Look around the room. Look around the room. You familiar with the William Dungy case of 1855? You familiar with the William Dungy case, 1855? The William Dungy case is a slander case that Lincoln did in 1850. He was sought after as an attorney. He was an attorney, lawyer, by William Dungy in the slander case. Now, William Dungy was Portuguese. And he married a European woman. A guy named William Spencer. She was a Spencer sister. And in line with a lot of the Inquisition operations, the traditions of Europeans, stealing our land and stuff like that, under the Inquisition operation. Keep in mind, treaties and stuff like this, the stuff supposed to have been stopped, at least that's what all the stuff was in place for. And amongst the Caicos, etc., and white familiars, some of the European operations, they still continue the Spanish Inquisition, which our people would be calling racism, and Ku Klux Klan operations. Are we clear? All right. William Spencer, the European, who is the brother of William Dungy's wife, who is European logic, and Dungy, who's Asiatic, he's Portuguese, right? Went about town. This is in Illinois, Chicago. Gabbing that his brother-in-law was a nigger, black bill. They call him black bill now. Keep in mind, this is why you got to put things in context. And this is a good case study for you, to put you in the context of time, so you can have a clearer understanding why generations ago they would fight you if you called them black. Which that knowledge of that motivation is lost to the generations now. That was a setup because the next move is to steal your estate. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? All right. So he acquired Lincoln to defend him in the slander case. So he filed slander charges against William Spencer. Now, essentially, although he's Portuguese, keep in mind he's African descent, so he's a Moor. So the argument, logically, is a status and a state, because estate and status are equal. And black is a big status. All right. So essentially, the case was slander. Lincoln won the case, and the predication of the argument was that Dungy was a Moor, not a Negro, etc. And so he won the case, and that's what makes that case a good study. Just like say the Dred Scott case is another good study, right? So you begin to recognize that the issue with this black and white thing is always status, and it's always a state. So when you get that in your mind and understand this, you understand why when people call you black and nigger, you are being set up for the next move to steal your estate. If you understand that, you understand why you always had a fight. All right? Our people don't know that that's still operative. It's just that the people under the brand system have lost knowledge of their bloodline and don't appear to understand why these brands exist. but then they don't understand why they're getting mistreated. And how they keep getting screwed. Now you understand where nationalization comes in? To fix the status issue. However, there's more to it. It's not just fixing that. You need to understand why, and you need to act on it. Failure to act on it is an assumed abandonment. Are we clear? And since the Europeans are colonists, their whole operations of every corporate institution is to steal estates, which is why they exist. They don't just exist because they're there. They're not just existing to make money like people keep thinking. They're here to administer over, steal, and transfer Moorish estates. Now, key. And this is what makes the Lincoln administration unique. With the Lincoln administration, Abraham Lincoln ran for president for the United States of the Republic. By fatwa or Moorish law, keep in mind that a barrister or a member of the Bar Association of the Circle Church of the Chancery could not hold any office under the United States Republic order. Why? Because they were actually secret operatives for the popes of Rome under the Inquisition to overthrow all republics. Are we clear? When you understand that, you understand CMB's why they say when you hire a lawyer, you give them your birthright.
Yeah.
All right, now you understand the Zodiac Constitution. All right, if you understand.
Representation is a dummy.
Keep in mind, when we're looking at the real politics now. So when you understand that, you can understand why a lot of so-called, when I say so-called, and that's with due respect, and not meant to be negative against them personally, why a lot of sheikhs and sheikhisses of the Moorish Science Temple in America are really in dishonor for not addressing these things with Moorish Americans. You know, while talking about nationality and birthright, not really explaining to them that it's stolen. They'll say it's stolen, or they'll say the Europeans living off their virtues, and not explain in detail why, because most of them are compromised. You know, with the Skull and Bones Agreement, that 501c3 set up by Lyndon Baines Johnson after they bumped Kennedy off. Right, yeah. So, 1859, 1860, Lincoln ran for the office of the presidency. According to fatwa, he could not hold that office. Now, keep in mind, this is back to what you mentioned, and this is back to what is known but not being taught to the people. The United States Trading Service Corporation, registered in France, 1754 by Benjamin Franklin. Keep in mind, later he was a minister plenipotentiary under the formation of the treaty. So you got to look at all these correlations, right? Lincoln could not, according to the nobility clause, run for president. So they ran him for
The nobility in the
president.
20 sections, right?
Yes.
Or the original 13th
Yes.
Amendment. Okay, okay.
Yes, that's called the, yeah.
I think it's number 16.
Yeah. 30-20. Yeah.
Right.
The 320, yeah. So they ran him on the platform of the United States Service Corporation that was promised the enumerated powers by contract, or clear. So the United States Service Corporation, registered in France, was promised the enumerated powers, you know, under treaty with the Queen of England, because the North is being colonized. So this is how people need to understand colonization, how things, they're still administered. You understand? But the agreement is that the Republic order must be maintained. That was for the protection of the Aboriginal people. That's the ordinance of 1787. You see? Now, so under the Constitution and treaty, we're supposed to be protected while these things are going on. Although we're party to this. Now you understand why Raleigh has the Moorish, the Amexem flag, and then you have the trading banner, which is the Stars and Stripes.
Right.
That's why you have that. You understand? Because they're held to the law.
Let me ask you this. I read somewhere that it said that the gold fringe is
Gold
related to
fringe is
commerce.
military operations.
Military, okay.
Yeah, in other words, it's not a peace flag, it's a military. It becomes a military operation.
Got it.
So that means they're warring. You see?
Yeah.
Now, this is the point.
Please start describing the 19 enumerated powers for me, please.
19, yeah, it was a general contracts of government.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
And so they're also limited, if you get the point. That means they're also limited. They can't step outside of that, the contract. And if they could breach in any of the contracts, they can be dismissed. And this is also back to us understanding the operations of trust in government in the first place.
So the 19 enumerated powers is the charter which of the operation of the company corporation, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So they breached the contract,
Oh,
which is
of
why their
course,
trustee
they've been-
terminated.
Thank you
Right.
so much.
That's why it's fraud from day one.
Now, hold on. So, in breach, who steps up?
Imposters.
No one stepped up. Not in the sense that everybody was unconscious, but there was no apparent concerted heirs stepping up. Are we clear? Now, key. Though they were not made public because they were being killed, murdered, or suppressed. Are we clear? Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation, which was a counter move to the secret Treaty of Verona that overthrew the Republic. Was overthrowing the Republic. This is why the Congress did modifications a couple of times on the Emancipation Proclamation. That's why you have 62, 63, etc. So that kind of put a target on Lincoln's back because he's countering the operations because we're supposed to be in treaty, right? And so this is where the 40 acres and the mules later comes from. They would have had to give all the land back, and they're trying to steal the land, and Lincoln's trying to hold them to the obligations.
Right.
Are we clear? Now this German guy called Lieber, this is where your Lieber Code comes in. That are used in international law right now, international rules of war, come from the Lieber Code, or called General Code, Lieber Code 100.
So he was German.
He was German. Now, and so Lincoln, he was working with Lincoln, although they give the credit to Lincoln, it was actually the Germans who did the Lieber Codes. So this became at the back of the Emancipation Proclamation of war activity. And this is where a lot of some of the Europeans here were taking a lot of the Moors as prisoners, in the north and the south, and enslaving them and whatnot. And some of them were killing or lynching them and stuff like that. And then the Lieber Codes were used to start protecting some of the Moors here. Do you understand? Who were in both the Confederate and the Union armies. And so a lot of the concepts that a lot of our people have today of what they think the Confederate soldiers are or are not are really incorrect. Because their argument was valid. It doesn't mean they weren't corrupt people amongst them and stuff like that. And so they were seceding. Some of the corporate states were seceding from the Union. And so Lincoln was trying to preserve the integrity of the Union. Not necessarily that he was just trying to liberate slaves. So let's not get this all together wrong. Right,
He was trying to hold
So what he did, they freed the slaves in the states that were in rebellion, not in all of the states. All of these things must be understood to understand history, how we got to where we are now. Now, Lincoln recognized that they were using him or administration to overthrow the republic. So Lincoln deliberately bankrupted the United States Corporation Company in 1860. 1861, the Congress did a coup d'etat. They write the coup d'etat in history as Congress adjourning sine die. It was a coup d'etat. All right, so that's 1861, March 27th. Now, so the United States Corporation went bankrupt. Are we clear? So they reestablished another corporation shell, registered in France, Guam, and Puerto Rico. That corporate shell, United States, remember this is a private corporation shell that Lincoln bankrupted. Keep this in mind, right? Called the United States. They got Lincoln out of the way. 1865, because the thing, the legislation was already in the pipeline. So the Bureau of Freedmen, of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands was established 1865. Lincoln, they bumped him off. 1868, within 3-year period, they squandered all the finance and were neutralizing all activities to make sure that we didn't get the land. See, because like say, for every man, woman, and child, this will get 40 acres of the land back. The United States was obligated to build whatever you needed, the house that you needed, whatever facilities you needed to manage and fund it, etc.
And that was 40 acres to each woman, each man, each child.
Yes, yes. In other words, that would have really literally reversed the Spanish Inquisition operations. You got to understand what you're really looking at here. So, they closed the Freedmen's Bureau they squandered everything, closed it down within 3 years. So 1868, they artificially set up a system of converting the debt of the United States Service Trading Corporation that Lincoln bankrupted onto the backs of the descendants of the Moors, who they branded Negro, Black, and Colored. And this is when they gave the United States Corporation the designation of person. This is where corporation is given the designation of person, so they could convert the estates of the Moors to back the United States Corporation debt since the wake of the commercial mercenary war that they falsely represent as the Civil War. Are we clear? And then they create what is called U.S. Treasury bonds. And that's what's been running this operation ever since. Are we clear? Now, so 1860, so now the major operations of the United States Corporation that Lincoln bankrupted is operating from Puerto Rico mainly now, and they start promoting the corporation as the country to muddy the water so that you couldn't see that the finances that's being robbed from the people is going to not to a country but to a corporation called the United States. So this is where you have today, most people think that the United States is a country. It's not a country, it's a private corporation occupying Morocco.
And everybody around the world saying, I want to go to the United States.
They're saying they want to go to Morocco.
Right.
Do you understand? So the United States Corporation shell that they recreated now. So you got a different United States Corporation shell that's a cover for the other United States corporation shell that bankrupted.
It's a shell game.
So this one lives up until 19 and 13. Then this man comes along from the Anayaguia, or what you call Cherokee, named Novadrali, named Timothy Drew. Sets up the old Kenai temple, starts holding the Queen of England to their obligations in the United States. So this United States crashes again. So now you have the crash again. So now they meet on Jekyll Island off Georgia and set up another United States corporation shell, registered in Puerto Rico. Are we clear? So if you look at the history as to what's really going on, you can understand all of the politics. Are we clear? Are we clear? So now, 1913, Woodrow Wilson meets with members of the Chancery and the Crown operations on the second level. Now, the second level Crown operations is all the lawyers and bankers, not the Queen of England.
Okay.
Are we clear?
Right.
So most of the time when you talk about the Crown, the people keep thinking about the Queen of England. No one thinks about the Circle Church. That's the bankers and the lawyers or the attorneys. In breach of the nobility, now that's why he starts suppressing the nobility clause, the 1320. The original Article of Amendment 13, nobility clause,
That's right.
and its 20 sections.
Yes.
All right, that's why that's suppressed. All right. Now, see, these are political operations.
So which
It's
going on?
suppressed because of the bankers and the
Is because they're promoting into the information narrative that the United States is a country when it's a private corporation, occupying and in treaty with Morocco, which is the land jurisdiction.
Another point that's mentioned, sorry, Taj. Another point that's mentioned in the original 20 sections is that the United States cannot issue titles of nobility. That's what it says in there. So lawyers can't be esquires, they can't have any type of titles in front or behind their name. And the other thing, going back to, real quick, Taj, the camera backing off that, why Lincoln was the president over the company servicing organization is because the 20 sections were in place that said, if you're a lawyer, you can't be president over these lands. Which is why he was only allowed to sit on top of the seat of the corporation, right?
So they took it out and they put things behind their name.
So they could take the rulership of sovereign operations.
Which belongs to us. Your title of nobility also
Now
gives
you
you title to
understand?
land.
If you all see, excuse me, we talking to food.
Sorry.
That movie,
Todd's got a video series called Shell
The
Game.
Birth
Sure.
of a Nation, and you see where they have the Moors and they say step down or die.
Yeah.
That's you being thrown out of government. Now, deal. Keep in mind dates, time, chronology, right?
Right.
So 1861, the Congress adjourned sine die. You see 1860 Lincoln, bankrupt the United States Corporation. They start promoting in the narrative that the United States Corporation is the country. False
That
narrative.
was in 1860.
1860, 1861, they start altering papers and promoting the United States as the country.
Is that the same date? Is the same year as the Morell Act? The Morell Act gave you a corporation Morell?
What, 1860 or 61?
1861.
That's when
Not sure. I have to check.
that's when Congress.
Yeah, but double check that.
Okay.
All right. Now, because all those things are relative around that period of time, and why it's so important for people to understand the politics. But mostly, I'm going over this so that you, when I say you, that's us, understand why you're doing what you're doing today. Your heirs, generations down the line, who've been cheated over and over again, and more effort has been made to keep you from this knowledge. Because when you get this knowledge and get your head straight, the game is on. The game is up. It's sort of like as you perfect your knowledge, the game is up. Not what you apply to them. You can't apply to them. You can't give you any damn thing that it don't belong to them to give you. It belongs to you to claim.
Claim it.
And that fine line of understanding is what we're trying to get across to the people. They keep allowing them to make these processes that you got to come and apply shit to them. No, you need to become competent and tell them things. You got to make claims. Do you understand? But you must be competent. It's vital that you're competent. And logically, if you're organized, the better off you are. You see the point? And our greater problem has been lack of organizing and having clean leadership. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then being conscious of where your position really is and acting on it. Don't believe a damn thing. Act on knowledge. But keep these times in order. So 1913, Timothy Drew, Noble Drew Ali, Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, steps up and holds everybody to the law. The United States crashes again. This is what the Jekyll Island thing is all about. So people are arguing whether they're gold and silver coins. How about them allodial titles? You see the whole point that huh? And then all of a sudden, 1913, the allodial titles become mortgages and deeds.
Right.
1913. Do you think that's circumstantial?
Of course.
Of course not.
Of course not. I'm sorry. I was right in thinking.
I mean, the loyal title is what we.
Exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Your title is the
so the
estate.
deed doesn't even exist
No.
once you step up.
Deeds is not a title of ownership.
Nope.
It's a sharecropping.
Sharecropping,
agreement of
yep.
debt. You can't be the debtor. You're the heir to the estate.
You the creditor.
The land can't be sold.
Your title of nobility is the allodial title to land. That's what it is.
It is the rightful claim. Supersedes all and any other instrumentality.
And the 20 sections they don't want us to have because in there it says that they can't issue titles of nobility.
Not just that,
Right.
is that the trading of slaves with Africa are prohibited by law. Section 12.
Punishable by death.
You see, these are fundamentals that everybody should know. See, if our people in general in the communities knew this knowledge, you wouldn't even have to tell them to nationalize. They'd be doing it on their own. Whether they even heard of Drew Ali or the Moorish Science Temple or the Moorish, they would have been doing it on their own. Is that the information is not presented correctly. People keep presenting it like they're joining a club or something. Or like it's some kind of religion. And so people don't take it correctly. They don't understand it's a birthright issue. It's an estate issue. It's a pedigree, inheritance issue of heritability. And not to be competent or on key is dangerous to your health, physically, economically, and politically. So if the status is not corrected, there's no need for you to discuss economic stability because it cannot happen. Because the economics is predicated on your estate. It's not complex. It's only complex when people don't understand what money is and what money is not. Do you see the? And then when they're putting that as an issue, when the estate is the issue, the rest of the stuff will fall in place if you fix that. This is why the first thing you do is declare your nationality. But then you gotta know why. So if you don't know the history, it's not important to you. It's interesting, not necessarily important. Oh, it's interesting, but maybe I might get around to it. And this is how people are looking at this movement. Why? The leadership has misrepresented the movement, and they have not been charged.
Wow.
And all I'm saying is don't argue with them, get the work done.
Yeah.
That's why you're here. Are we clear? That's why you're here, and that's what I'm trying to impart to you. That is the spirit of your honor. really to the cause of why this operation even exists is where your cure is. It's in the heart and in the mind. And once you start projecting that, that is the spirit power that they can't overcome. Not a gun. Can't be done with a gun. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Now, speak up.
Sorry, it's a couple points. We're my brother and I are out of the Bronx, and we have been going to Brooklyn for class and before. We kind of found.
I can't hear you too good. Go ahead, speak a little louder. Because your voice is soft.
I'm loud in my head. No, I am. So we had decided to try to do something where we live at in the Bronx instead of just going all the way over to Brother Malik Bay for joint classes in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I was telling the brother, I said, you know, it was about 5 of us military people actually had to be in that same area. And I said, you know, we need to do something on this thing and try to help what's going on with council work. You know, I said I want to make sure that at least I speak to someone so I know I'm in alignment 100% with what's happening with the council court. I'm totally supporting this, but I just wanted to make sure that, you know,
see,
everyone knows what we're doing.
Put it like this. Remember what she was reading earlier.
Yes.
The reason I had her read that is so that you can understand that the obligation and the platform is already in place. We had not been operating on it. And then we get into this idea because of the way sometimes people, even sometimes when they mean well, they get into this psychology of having meetings and trying to reinvent the wheel rather than understand the wheel already exists. You need to get on the cart.
I'm with you.
And we get frustrated because you still come back to trying to find principles to operate. And it doesn't mean that you're not in the right thought patterns, but unless you're on the platform, it still don't apply. That's what our people need to understand. The platform already exists. You need to get back into the constitutional fold of government of which you were thrown out. You don't need to have a meeting to reinvent the Constitution and treaty. It already exists. And what happens is people would always get us in these meetings to sit and have discussions of economic security. You can't have damn economic security because you don't know what the hell you're dealing with. You're not allowed to have money, so you ain't got no money. So let's start off right there. Understand what commercial paper is, or fiat. And you can't build wealth by it. You can only build debt. Now, so get it over yourself. Don't mean that you can't use it, and it doesn't mean that we're not forced to use it at this time. Don't get it twisted. You know what I mean? All right, so now let's get that clear. However, learn how to use it wisely while having other goals. Are we clear? What is the goal? To reclaim your lost estate. That's what your goal is. And you must know that that's what your goal is. It can't be something that you arrive at. If you're arriving at it, you're on the path of studying, but you ain't ready to get in the ring. Don't start getting in the ring. All right, you're my trainer, right? You say, now when you jab you like this and everything, don't we start taking selfies? It's dangerous. So I'm in the ring, and I'm in there being cute and stuff. And you say, what the hell you know, put up your left. Guard yourself at all times. And you in there ego tripping and you come. You say, what's wrong with you? It bumped me and all that shit. Well, whose fault you're in the ring. Right. Once you get in the ring, it's on. What point? Can we discuss jabbing? No, we supposed to be at the gym. You know, you're in the middle, second round, ding, and you talking about, can we have a jab discussion? Kind of late. And this is basically with us. We've been BSing with belief systems, and the real world has been rotating around us.
Yes, yes.
We're like the big taffy. You know them big circle taffies? We're like the only taffy walking down the street with no wrapper. Everybody else is full. We get down the next block and we done lost weight, and it ain't Jenny Craig. You know, and we don't get it. You know, and so we've got to get our people to understand that we cannot operate with naivety in real society. It's dangerous to your health.
We looking for the prize and we are the prize.
We're the taffy and getting late.
Right.
You know, and we don't get it. And then people who know what's happening to us is birthright theft keep talking racism and colors, and we arguing the wrong damn argument, and it's birthright theft. Meanwhile, we losing weight. Do you understand? You don't even know that money is measured by weights and measures. So our people don't understand fiat. They say fiat and don't understand fiat. And people among our own is promoting the bullshit. That's where our problem is. Now, kid. 1913, the United States Corporation crashed again. Drew Ali sets up the old Canaanite temple. That lives into around 1924, 1925. Drew Ali registered the old Canaanite temple and the Moorish Temple of Science as a civic organization, teaching government, which he also reminds the people to study Marcus Garvey, who's teaching government structure. United States Corporation crashes again. So they re-registered the United States Service Corporation in in Florida, Nevada, New York, 1925. Which is those corporate papers I shared with people years ago. And you see that the United States clearly is a private corporation. It's not a country. Now, so that's 1925. They covered this BS up, and around 1928, it cannot be covered up anymore. This thing is falling absolutely apart. They infiltrate the movement to neutralize Drew Ali. So in 1928, Drew Ali adopts a religious affidavit to the movement to protect the movement from the sellouts who are inside the movement. 1928. So United States Corporation just absolutely, the crash that already took place in 25, they can't cover it up anymore. 1929, they assassinate Drew Ali, and then the ship crashes. Again. Between 1929, 1933, in that area, they take a lot of the funds that they robbed from Drew Ali, from the order, etc., and they pay off a lot of Negroite leaders, and this is where you get the Temple of Allah that came out of the Moorish movement, which becomes later the Temple of Islam, which becomes later the Nation of Islam. You get Sweet Daddy Grace, the House of God, the House of Prayer. Follow Divine, got the building, that's why they preserved that building up there on Broad Street now, making it condos. Bishop Cherry, all these people had this knowledge. That's called the period of the Great Sellout. And so you see all the so-called big black organizations that are living now between 1930 and 34.
That's when that came into existence.
That's where they have their origin.
Wow.
And this is part of what Malcolm found out too. It's also part of why got him killed when they couldn't buy him up because they knew he was going to tell. But I'm just throwing things at you so that you, being younger, a lot of things that a lot of elders don't really talk to you about in detail. If you know certain keys, you can see, your spirit will take you and fill in all the rest of the stuff.
Didn't Gary Divine go into Reverend Ike in New York? Reverend Ike led into
all of them. All of these guys were self-operative. Yeah. Take the coins from the people, keep them pacified. Negroites. This is basically what's been going on. In other words, lining their own pockets. using God, Jesus, Allah, whatever flavor ice cream, you know, that the monkeys would accept. And you know, Negro means monkey. That's why I say they call them Negroes. And so this is the culture of another process of us falling deeper and deeper into the ignorance, thinking that we're being spiritual, thinking we're being spiritual, with the help of the leader guys who know the truth themselves really, and taking advantage of people who really don't know better. Now, so when you look at this, right, 1860, United States Corporation falls, it lives, reestablished, lives to 1913, falls again, lives to 1925. And if you look at these correlated dates, you'll see they harmonize with Raleigh's activities. And it's not coincidental. So 1913, all of the allodial titles, Wilson and Skull and Bones and the other operatives convert all of the allodial titles into mortgages and deeds in 1913.
Right.
Not circumstantial. So now anyone who thinks that they're buying property gets a mortgage and deed and thinking that they're owning property, and they're really tripped into a sharecropping agreement, which means they can be removed at any time. You know what I'm saying? So now,
even if they paying their mortgage on time, they can still.
They're
After the 72 hours.
you know, and now keep in mind, sheepesses of the Moorish Lion National Movement being aware of the real history of their adepts, logically have the obligation to inform the heirs of the real conditions of politics. And this is again why, with all due respect, you know, I always say people, doesn't matter what organization they belong to, if they're talking about liberating our people in any manner whatsoever, and don't tell them this part of the history that got them to where they are right now, that they're compromised. How you put it, because this is the politics, it's not an opinion. These are known facts. And why do people not talk about it? Except that they've been beneficiaries of the property. You understand what I'm saying? It's sort of like somebody peeing in the well, and then they will sell you a new well because everybody's getting sick. And while they're digging the well and they're charging you, they're paying in it too, to start the cycle over again. While looking like they're doing you a favor at your expense. And this is basically what's been going on. So this is again what I'm saying, and I'm saying to you, and I'm saying in general, people need to understand the principles of how we got to where we are. You don't need to believe a damn thing. If you understand the history, you understand the politics. You know, it's sort of like, even though there's things that you know that you need to learn and need to evolve in, you ain't damn naive anymore. You understand? And this is what we're seeking amongst each other. That you slay the naivety, not deny people whatever code they belong to. You understand what I'm saying? But to kill that naivety about what they think they're dealing with. Because most people have no idea what they're really dealing with. This thing is bigger than the average person, you know. Logically, we all want to, you know, sit back comfortable and not be stressed every day in our little domicile. However, it's bigger than this. And while we seek to secure that, think on the larger scale. You know, that your house will be secure as yours is mine. And that the principles that we operate on is what's going to secure all of us.
You see the report they did on Iceland? Iceland.
That's why they arrested all those chancellor operations.
That's right. The lead guy out there, he did some interaction with the International Monetary Fund and borrowed 60 gazillion billion. I don't know, it was a large amount of money.
Remember, the IMF is still the Vatican. That's right. And this is what people need to understand. United Nations, Vatican. IMF, Vatican. US, Vatican. You know, our people need to really Understand what they're doing.
There's only one Bible with multiple personalities.
I'm not saying it is a negative, but we don't need to dwell on that. We need to look at statistically and logistically what are these component parts. Let's understand the component parts of the operations. Yes, these people are dishonorable, but you don't need to focus on that. You need to focus on that they're operating against your state and that you need to be getting your act together. Meaning that you need to start, putting your door up, knocking your door. That mentality from a political perspective. Now listen to what I'm saying. This is why, like, over the years, I've always been saying to Moorish Americans, we're all on a learning curve of greed.